Hello, John Hively here. Today we're going to look at the tariffs, which went into effect, I believe, yesterday, May 1st, and today is May 2nd. So the tariffs are going to increase interest rates, or have already, and they're going to increase prices. And in either case, interest rates and prices are going to be redistributed from your pockets into the pockets of the wealthy. And I'm going to show you how. But first, let's take a look at a CNBC headline from this morning. And it reads, China said it is evaluating U.S. overtures to initiate trade negotiations, potentially paving the way for the world's two largest economies to start talks to resolve a trade war that has rumbled financial markets and cast a pall on global economic activities. Senior U.S. officials have reached out recently through relevant parties multiple times, hoping to start negotiations with China on tariffs, a spokesman for the Chinese Commerce Ministry said in a statement Friday. While assessing the possibility of starting any negotiations, Chinese authorities reiterated Beijing's request for the U.S. to remove all unilateral tariffs. Failure to do so would indicate an outright lack of sincerity from Washington and further compromise mutual trust, according to a CNBC translation. If the U.S. wants to talk, the Chinese said, it should show its sincerity and be prepared to correct its wrong practices and cancel the unilateral tariffs, according to one statement. So, tariffs on China, President Trump just slapped 145% tariff on Chinese imports. That means you're going to pay more for Chinese goods. But 145% tariff is basically an embargo because no one's going to buy a whole lot of Chinese goods with 145% tax on them. So that should lead to inflation. And I'll show you how the inflation works right now. Give me a moment. Now, President Trump is going to give us an idea of how the tariffs are going to work.
It'll happen. I mean, look, right now, and I told you before, they're having tremendous difficulty because their factories are not doing business. They made $1 trillion with Biden, $1 trillion, even $1.1 trillion with Biden selling us stuff. Much of it we don't need. Somebody said, the shelves are going to be open. Well, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, and maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. But we're not talking about something that we have to go out of our way. They have ships that are loaded up with stuff, much of which, not all of it, but much of which we don't need.
So that's how it's going to work. There's going to be fewer dolls or fewer Chinese products coming in. So what you're going to have is a lot of people bidding up the prices of those items, such as, dolls. 80% of toys here, and I've heard as much as 95%, are made in China. Now look, this is going to be a wonderful opportunity for the wealthy to raise prices and to get more profit. They're going to sock it to you, in other words. Now, here's something from the Lever News a couple days ago, just 2 days ago. And it's called How Shareholder Payouts Fuel Corporate Profiteering. And I'm going to read it to you. Corporations are preparing to cite Trump's trade war as justification for raising prices, just as they previously cited pandemic supply chain slowdowns to raise prices. It's a familiar tactic. They want us to believe macroeconomic forces mean they have no choice but to fleece us. However, a new Federal Reserve study notes that ever higher prices have coincided with a sudden increase in corporate profit-taking. These profit increases are fueled by a quest for dividend payments to company shareholders rather than for resources to reinvest in companies, all while employee compensation declines. So some of these corporations are are cutting employee compensation while jacking up prices to sock it to you. And inflation, I'm reading again, inflation should not automatically increase profit margins. Businesses may be charging more for products, but they also face higher input costs. Yet inflation has coincided with an unprecedented rise in profit margins, according to the Fed study. Whereas profits averaged 13.9% of national income over the 2010 through 2019 period, a surge began in 2020, and by the end of 2024, corporate profits comprised more than 16% of national income. So it's a big increase by the billions of dollars. So they're going to stick it to you because of the tariffs. So how does that work? Let me explain it. I'm going to bring my whiteboard. But first, I'm going to explain how inflation works, which is just as important. I'm going to explain how interest rates are working. So Japan, a few weeks ago, in response to President Trump's tariffs, started selling U.S. Treasury bonds by the millions. So when they began selling, interest rates had to rise in order to entice buyers to buy those bonds. Now, your mortgage interest rates, car loans payments, interest rates, credit card interest rates, all your interest rates are tied to those U.S. Treasury bonds. So when they go up, it just so happens that all other interest rates go up with it, typically. So that means that the big banks are going to sock it to you too. So they're going to, and the credit card companies, they're all going to sock it to you. It's a huge, the inflation is a big redistribution scam from you to the wealthy. 69 to 100% of the income and wealth of the rich are based on stocks, and they either receive it of their income and wealth. So it's either through dividends or capital gains. That is, a capital gain is when they buy a bond, say buy NVIDIA at 100, and then you sell it at 100, not a bond, but a share of NVIDIA. You buy a share of NVIDIA at $110, and you sell it at 120, the $10 difference, 120 minus 110, is a capital gains. And that's how they do it. And the profits are the primary ingredient necessary to push stock prices up. So the big banks are going to sock it to you. Other major corporations are going to sock it to you. And so let's review this right here on the mighty whiteboard so you can get a hold of this. So you're basically, money goes from you when you buy something to the corporation, which acts both as a fleecer of you, but also acts as a middleman. And then via dividends, they hand out your money via dividends to the wealthy, and also via capital gains. So that's how Trump's tariffs are impacting you. And the tariffs against China went into effect, I believe, May 1st, which was yesterday. So anyway, that's how you're going to get fleeced. And there are going to be layoffs for sure in numerous other industries, such as trucking, longshoremen, retail, and other areas of the economy. Slowdowns are already happening. Hiring is slowing down a bit. And I would imagine we're going to head for a recession in the next, say, 6 months if the negotiations between China and the United States never happen. And both of these guys, the Chinese government and President Trump, have to be macho. And it's the other guy who's going to have to back down. So they're both thinking the other guy has to back down. So what you're going to find is that neither may back down, and this standoff could go for years. Anyway, it's a sunny day once again. It's time for me to get out of here. I don't want to yap too much, but you're going to get socked. Just be aware. Inflation is an income redistribution scam simply because if it was a really competitive economy, prices would go down. Individual prices sometimes do come down. But as a rule, we always have to suffer from inflation, which is nonsense. Anyway, if you could, God, I'm looking at that sun. Anyway, if you could like, subscribe, or share, you would help me out a great deal and help yourselves out a great deal, because I have a battle plan, which I will review next summer to end oligarchy that we now suffer from, that's sucking you dry, and it is an oligarchy that's sucking you dry, and keeping your wages and salaries stagnant, cutting into your health care, wiping out your retirement. And by the way, that's one thing we're going to cover in the future, how they've done this. The big oligarchs have done this to the tune of redistributing $65 trillion from the bottom 90% of share of income earners to themselves. And we'll get into that in a later thing. But anyway, share, like, and subscribe. You'll be doing yourselves a great favor. By the end of the summer, I'll reveal the way we're going to turn this thing around and beat the oligarchs. Anyway, have a good one. Thanks.